I think, Piers, that the principal reason that you got a ceasefire now under Donald Trump is because the Israelis were in deep trouble in Gaza. In a very important way, Trump was pushing on an open door. You want to understand that the IDF, the Israeli military, had not defeated Hamas. It was incapable of defeating Hamas. The Israeli military was suffering significant casualties in Gaza. And the Israeli military, which is configured to fight short wars, not long wars, is overextended and was beginning to come apart at the seams. So the IDF itself was putting huge pressure on Netanyahu to cut a deal, to have a ceasefire, because it could not continue to operate the way it was inside of Gaza. So it was this situation that allowed Trump to come in and push hard. There's no question he pushed hard to get this deal that's now in place.
The deal was pretty well the deal that was available from kind of May onwards under the Biden administration. I mean, you gave some credit there to Trump for getting this actually off and running, the ceasefire. I mean, it seems to people on the outside of this that Trump was a significant factor through his Middle East envoy, going around putting the hard yards in and cracking a few heads together, that actually, if Trump hadn't won, it is highly unlikely we'd be in this scenario. Do you think that that's correct?
Piers, even the optimism tosses out a question, but it's clear he's about to get a reality check. Professor John doesn't just disagree, he dismantles that argument like a pro. While Piers is busy clinging to his version of events, Professor John calmly reminds him that reality doesn't bend to media narrative. It's like watching someone try to explain physics to a toddler. Stick around. My name's Z from Zees Political Arrow, because when Professor John speaks, Piers' version of the story gets a major rewrite.
No, I don't. I think that the Biden administration, or what would have been the Kamala Harris administration, would have been able to get a ceasefire. It might have taken a little bit of time. But the more important point, Piers, is that Donald Trump is going to remain profoundly committed to Israel moving forward, just the way Joe Biden was profoundly committed to Israel over his 4 years in the White House. And just as Kamala Harris would have been profoundly committed to Israel if she had defeated Trump.
Is the difference perhaps that Trump essentially is a man of peace, which is a curious word to use about him, given how incendiary he can be a lot of the time, but he really believes that war is a very bad thing, not just for human life, but for business. And that therefore, both with Israel, and we'll come on to Ukraine, that he just wants these things sorted because he wants to get on with actually what he preferred to be doing, which is doing big deals.
I think there's no question that Trump is a man of peace, to use your phrases. He is not a warmonger. And I think that Joe Biden was a warmonger, or is a warmonger. And I think that Trump is not interested in starting any new wars, as he made clear. And I think the issue on which I may be proved wrong regarding my claim that there's not much difference between Biden and Trump has to do with Iran. The question is, will we attack Iran? I think the Biden administration did not want to attack Iran, but I think that they were more inclined to do so if necessary than Trump will be. I think that Trump does not, under any circumstances, want to have to attack Iran because he is not a warmonger. So I think there is a difference between the two presidents. And I think the one issue where I may be proved wrong is on Iran. And let's hope I'm proved wrong, because the last thing the United States needs and the Middle East needs is a war involving Iran.
Interesting what you said about the IDF and about the war with Hamas. I mean, what was pretty alarming to people were two things were quite alarming. One was before the ceasefire, in the days preceding it, was an admission from the American intelligence that they believed that for every Hamas terrorist who'd been killed, they'd already been replaced by other people who shared that ideology. And secondly, you saw some evidence of that when the first tranche of hostages were released, and you just saw these mob scenes around these young women where Hamas insignia was on full display. and it was a clearly deliberate show of force, that we're not defeated. In fact, quite the opposite. What did you make of that?
I think what it shows, Piers, is that Israel has suffered a significant defeat in Gaza. You want to understand that as a result of this ceasefire, not only is Hamas alive and well, but the Israelis, to my amazement, are leaving Gaza. Netanyahu said they were going to be there for the long term. It was quite clear with this general's plan that everybody talked about that Israel was bent on ethnically cleansing northern Gaza. If you look at what's happening today on the news, there are huge numbers of Palestinians moving back into northern Gaza. And furthermore, humanitarian aid is flowing in. And as you pointed out, if you look at Hamas, it is alive and well. So I think this is a serious defeat for Israel.
This idea that President Trump put forward, that perhaps all the displaced Gazans could go to Egypt and Jordan. I mean, I'm in Saudi Arabia at the moment, and certainly the feeling I'm getting in the region generally is that's a complete non-starter for Arabic people, that would happen, because they would fear, probably with some reason, that there are certainly members of Netanyahu's cabinet who would be quite happy never to see any of them come back. And that's been their game plan for some of them from the start of this. Do you think there's any chance that this would happen?
I think there's hardly any chance. You want to remember that Israel's principal goal since October 7th, vis-a-vis the Palestinians in Gaza, was to ethnically cleanse the Palestinians. Israel's principal goal, although it was not talked about very much in the Western media, was to drive the Palestinians out. They failed. Look at the pictures on the television today. What's happening is the Palestinians are returning to northern Gaza. Exactly the opposite is happening. And what is Netanyahu going to do now? Or what is Trump going to do now? They're going to force 2.3 million Palestinians to leave Gaza. You want to remember that these people are not going to leave voluntarily. And there are about 2.3 million Palestinians in Gaza. The idea that Israel, with the United States helping, can drive them out into Egypt and Jordan is just not a serious argument.
What happens now? I mean, first, do you think this ceasefire is going to hold? That I think it's in three parts, this first sort of 6-week ceasefire. Do you think it's going to hold for that long? Secondly, what happens after that? Is it? Well, let me ask you first of all that question. Do you think the ceasefire will hold?
Well, I think the ceasefire will hold until all the hostages are out. There are two phases to the ceasefire. Each one is 6 weeks. And in the first phase, 33 of the 98 hostages come out. And then in the second phase, this is the second 6 weeks, the remaining 65 hostages come out. And I think it is likely that the ceasefire will hold up to that point. But then we morph into the question that you're asking is, what is the long term for Gaza? And that's a very difficult question to answer. I find it hard to believe that the Israelis are going to go back in there and they're going to start all over again where they started in October 2023. That just doesn't make sense to me. But then the question is, what happens inside of Gaza? You want to remember that Hamas has effectively won, which means Hamas is effectively going to be in control of Gaza, which is apparently not acceptable to either Israel or the United States. So the question is, how does this end? And it's very hard to say.
Well, also, you have a leader of the Palestinian Authority who's in his 80s, and there's a lot of concern that if Hamas was not to have any role in leading Gaza after this, and any form of government, then who actually would? Would it be the Palestinian Authority, who, to many people's eyes, are too damaged to do that? And if it's not the Palestinian Authority or Hamas, then who the hell is it?
I don't know. It's certainly not the Palestinian Authority. The Palestinian Authority was damaged goods before October 7th, and they're in even worse shape today. it's hard to imagine them coming into Gaza and running the place. Palestinian Authority is seen as being complicitous with the Israelis. Many Palestinians, maybe most Palestinians, think that the Palestinian Authority does Israel's dirty work in the West Bank. And the last thing they need is for the PA to come into Gaza and do Israel's dirty work there. So it's not going to be the PA. It is possible that some sort of new organization or institution will be created, but it's hard to see what that is at this point in time. And furthermore, even if you replace Hamas, whoever comes in to replace Hamas is going to have deeply hostile relations with Israel, because Israel is interested not only in cleansing Gaza, but Israel is deeply interested in not giving the Palestinians a state of their own. And the end result of that is the Palestinians are going to continue to resist. You know, we had a first intifada and we had a second intifada before we had October 7th. So if you don't have some sort of meaningful peace agreement where the Palestinians get some sense of sovereignty over a fixed piece of land, there's no chance that this is going to go away. You're going to have apartheid for as far as the eye can see. And apartheid, from my point of view, is a prescription for disaster for Israel, for the Palestinians, and for the United States.
So what's next in this never-ending saga? Is Israel going to target the West Bank next for some expansion? Or are we just waiting for the next headline to make a move? Who knows? But one thing's for sure, Piers is still playing catch-up. The guy is like a GPS that keeps recalculating, but never quite gets to the destination. Professor John, on the other hand, is already several steps ahead, mapping out the real path forward. And while Piers is stuck asking what ifs, Professor John's over here dropping truth bombs like it's his full-time job. Keep your eyes open, folks. If you want the real story, don't bother with Piers' version. Stick with the professor, where the facts are actually well factual. If you want to get to the heart of the matter, ditch the fluff and stuff, and stick with the facts. It's time to take off the blinders and get the real scope, straight from the source. This is Zees Political Arrow, where the truth isn't just heard, it's exposed. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. And until then, I'll catch you all on the next one. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.